Ready? All right, good evening. It's 5:30 p.m. on Tuesday, October 6th, 2020, and this regular meeting of the Sandpoint Planning and Zoning Commission is now called to order. I am Chairman Tom Riggs, presiding in council chambers at City Hall in Sandpoint. For the record, Commissioners Kate Huseman, Slate Camp, Jason Welker, and Mose Dunkel are present, as am I. Commissioners Camp, Welker, and Dunkel are participating in person, and myself here in council chambers. Commissioner Huseman is participating remotely. Commissioner Hastings is absent, and we believe that Commissioner Shook is en route, and if he logs in, then we will announce that. Are there any general announcements or reports from the commissioners or from city staff, something that's not part of the agenda already? Yes, Eric.
Here, just want to let the commissioners know that the American Planning Association Idaho Chapter Conference, virtual, is kicking off tomorrow. And in talking to our finance director, it's very inexpensive for elected and appointed officials. If any of you are interested, you can go to idahoapa.org, and if there's any sessions you'd like, let us know, and we may be able to provide you a login.
All right, thank you. Are there any other general announcements or comments? If not, the next item on the agenda are the meeting minutes approval. The next item is approval of the meeting minutes for September 15th. It was a regular meeting on September 15th. I'd entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
I so move.
Kate, thank you. We have a motion.
Second.
And a second from Commissioner Welker. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. And hearing no nays, that is unanimous of those present.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Commissioner Shuck has joined the meeting.
Commissioner Shook, welcome.
Thank you.
Next is I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the September 22nd special meeting. Is there a motion?
I so
So
moved.
Commissioner Welker beat you to the punch. Is that a second? Commissioner Huseman?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Hearing no nays, that motion is passed. Moving on to old business, the final item on the agenda this evening is a continued deliberation and a decision regarding a recommendation for preliminary approval of the University Park Subdivision application PS 20-003-0003. It should be noted that the Commission is not the ultimate decision maker on the approval or denial of the application, but is tasked with making a recommendation to City Council with a motion and a vote to either approve with conditions, or deny the application as a recommendation to Council. As stated previously, the Planning and Zoning Commission hearing on this matter was held and subsequently closed on September 15th. Therefore, no additional public comment and no new information may be presented. Due to a possible conflict of interest, Commissioner Shook has recused himself and will be abstaining from any further deliberation or vote related to this matter. During the deliberation at the September 15th meeting, the Commission voted to table this matter. At this time, I would entertain a motion to take this matter from the table. Is there a motion?
I so move.
Was that Kate?
Yep.
Thanks. Do I have a second?
Second.
And all those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes. The Commission will now continue deliberations. As a reminder, Commissioners, you may ask questions of staff. And if you wish to make a motion, suggested motions have been provided on the dais. There will be no questions, though, for anyone other than staff. So with that, we will continue deliberations. I think as a first matter of business, are there any questions that have occurred to anyone that you want to ask the staff right off the bat here to get started?
I have one.
Okay, Kate?
In reviewing the comp plan, it's evident to me that although I believe we adopted changes to the comp plan last December, the zoning for this parcel is not in alignment with the comp plan. And that presents me with a dilemma because the subdivision as proposed meets the requirements of the zoning if we provide a couple of variances, but it is not at all in line with the comp plan. Do we have any option to refer to the comp plan, or is the zoning the final word on this?
Aaron?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Commissioner Hughesman, first point of clarity, there is technically only really one variance that may be applicable to tonight, and that is referring to the block length. The other item, of course, is the double frontage lots. Doesn't specifically say a variance, it's just really the standards in code, or I think the most applicable standard is whether there are other conditions that make it less desirable or make it undesirable to meet that standard. So just for technically, the variance would only apply to the block length. So to answer your question, it's really the rules that are in place on the ground in zoning that are applicable to the subdivision, and that in terms of subdivisions, that specifically refers to lot size, lot frontage, which and any other standards in subdivision code, but those with regards to the zoning designation, the zoning code, development standards, lot size and frontage, they do meet those requirements.
Commissioner Hughesman, did that take care of your question?
Yes, thank you.
All right.
If I could ask staff one question in regard to the double frontage lots. How does unusual topography apply to this situation?
Thank you, thank you, Commissioner Camp. So in the staff report, we identified the unusual topography limiting side street development really applies to the eastern lot. I want to see, or eastern block. Let me pull it up here. I think that is block 3. The long block that essentially that has steep slopes to the east of it on the northeastern portion of the plat. So that's where the topography poses a challenge. The code for block length states that so that's where it would only apply, basically.
And not to block 1. I apologize for interrupting.
So block 1, no, there is no limiting topography, and that's where the variance comes in. Sorry, you asked about block length, right?
Right.
Yes.
No.
Well, topography. And its effect
Okay,
too.
I'm sorry.
You're asking about
Double frontage.
double frontage,
Yeah.
not block length.
So topography is a limiting factor for block length, right? It's specifically called out in block length as a limiting factor. And double frontage lots also specifies topography. It says topography, a more integrated street plan, or other conditions make it undesirable to meet this prohibition. For block 1, topography, so topography does apply to that other block as well. There are double frontage lots, but the block 1 on Boyer, there's no limiting factor with topography. We don't have a specific definition for integrated street plan within the development itself. It meets standards, and by our analysis in the staff report, that is integrated. But then the other conditions, I think, is really kind of the question before you tonight. What other conditions are there? And there's, what's that?
If any.
If any.
Thank you.
Other questions for staff? I think to move this along then, why don't we go one by one with just any comments or observations you wish to make before someone makes a motion? So I'll start with Jason.
Sure. I have spent a lot of time digging into both the 2009 comprehensive plan and the 2019/2020 feedback that has been solicited from the community for the updated comprehensive plan, and probably most of all into the Title 10, the subdivision zoning codes. And if the commission doesn't mind, I would just like to share some of my findings and some of my analysis of those findings. So I'm going to actually start with the comprehensive plan that we have in place right now, the 2009 comp plan, and just read a few passages just that stood out to me that relate to this subdivision proposal. And I'll just read some of these. These are pretty much copied word for word out of the 2009 comprehensive plan. First is that Sandpoint residents value their traditional neighborhoods, and that the plan envisions increased density to emulate many of Sandpoint's existing urban patterns and traditional neighborhoods. The 2009 comprehensive plan states some specific goals and then policies that the city should put in place, which I believe it has since put in place through its code, its zoning and codes to enforce these policies. One is to make higher density areas dynamic, attractive, and desirable places to live and operate businesses. And the policy recommended in order to achieve that goal is, in higher density areas, locate buildings to emphasize the relationship to the street, encourage pedestrian access, and establish identities of individual districts and mixed use neighborhoods. The plan's concept is mentioned throughout the comprehensive plan. This plan's planning concept seeks to emulate the traditional neighborhood development, which it abbreviates TND, pattern established during the early 20th century, adapted to serve more contemporary needs. This planning concept directs new development to take a shape that embraces those traditional neighborhood development characteristics the community already enjoys and cherishes, to emulate traditional neighborhood development in areas identified for more intensity, ensuring new population is housed close to services. And another stated goal is to ensure that new neighborhoods provide the same charm and comfort of Sandpoint's historic neighborhoods. Policies recommended to achieve that goal include cul-de-sacs and other dead-end streets are discouraged, with a preference instead for traditional grid street pattern. Anybody who's looked into that 2009 plan sees the term traditional grid street pattern many, many times. And it says that neighborhood services, public open spaces, and parks shall be connected with multimodal paths. So those are just some of the passages from the 2009 comprehensive plan that really stood out to me in relationship to this proposal. Commissioner Huisman also mentioned the I think she was referring to the context area overlays for this property, which were in both the staff report and in the 2009 comprehensive plan, which are context area 3 and context area 3B. In fact, the the whole Boyer frontage of this property was identified as context area 3B. And I know that's not how it's currently zoned, but here's just what the comprehensive plan envisioned for the western area of this development. And that's CA 3B, which is development patterns that envision mixed use, neighborhood compatible retail. These areas are typified by pedestrian focused activities such as salons, coffee shops, and responsibly scaled professional or institutional offices. All commercial structures should have a residential component to prevent these areas from becoming vacant islands of inactivity after the close of business hours. So that's what pretty much the western half of the University Place property was envisioned to contain. The portions of the interior were envisioned as CA3, which is development patterns that increase the density of housing through the use of smaller lot sizes, smaller setbacks, options for shared open space, and the inclusion of attached and detached multifamily units. CA3 supports the traditional street grid system, sidewalks, and walkable proximity to services exemplified by many of Sandpoint's traditional neighborhoods. So this property was envisioned to contain mixed retail, residential, and a traditional grid street pattern, along with substantial amounts of park space, which the current proposal does include the letter of intent with Connexu Land Trust and some public access on about 1/5 of the property. So I'd now like to just highlight some passages from Title 10 of City Code that I've done a lot of research on in the last few days. Title 10, Chapter 1, Section 6, numbers 5 and 7, we've talked a lot about. I actually also think that number 6 relates quite a bit to this proposal. Number 5 is block length, which reads block lengths shall be between 300 feet and 600 feet. Number 7 is double frontage lots, which are prohibited except where unusual topography, a more integrated street plan, or other conditions make it undesirable to meet this prohibition. Something that also jumped out to me is the next sentence in number 7, which is that subdivisions providing a platted common space of 25 feet or more between any street right of way and any single row of lots shall not be considered to have platted double frontage lots. I had to go back and look at the plat map to see if there was a 25-foot common space buffer, and there's not. In fact, I recall from our last meeting that the setback for the property to a future fence might be only 1 foot from the public right of way, the sidewalk. Number 6 also stood out to me. This is something that was not identified in the staff report that might require a variance if you read it literally. And number 6 is related to street arrangement. It says that the arrangement of streets in new subdivisions or other development shall make provision for the direct continuation of the principal existing streets and adjoining subdivisions or their proper projection where adjoining property is not subdivided. So if you look at any map of the area, you'll see Culver's Road and Airport Way are 2 roads that come in from the west to North Boyer. Neither of these continues into the development. In fact, the next street, or the first street into the development will be, I believe it was called Ebbett Way further south, and then there's 1 street just north of that, but that's where we get that 2,000-foot block from the first street, the northernmost street into the development all the way up to Mountain View Road. So it also occurred to me that they're actually implicitly asking for a variance relating to continuation of principal existing streets, because those 2 streets will now dead end at North Boyer rather than continuing into the new development. However, if Culver's and Airport Way did continue into the new development, then there wouldn't be a block length variance needed because those blocks are within the city's 600-foot maximum limit. So those are just some highlights from the city code and the comprehensive plan that I think relate to this based on what I've been reading. If I may, I'd like to just offer some of my analysis, my interpretation
Please.
of this information now. First, I'll talk about number 7, double frontage lots. It's my understanding that the intent of the prohibition on double frontage lots is to limit exactly the kind of development proposal that we are considering today, one where houses are not integrated with the surrounding neighborhoods, but instead face inwards towards one another, cordoning off the rest of Sandpoint from the new development and leaving residents of the subdivision somewhat isolated from the rest of the community. I think we're all familiar with the walled subdivisions of Hayden and the Rafton Prairie, and I don't know if anybody in Sandpoint wants to have that sort of development a mile from our traditional downtown core and our traditional neighborhoods that lie just across the train tracks on North Boyer. But I'm afraid that's what we might end up with if we approve this or if we recommend approval of this proposal. On the other hand, the staff report did identify the reasoning for the double frontage exemption relating to the status of North Boyer currently being an arterial roadway and the dangers of putting possibly driveways onto such a road. I believe that there is precedent for arterial roadways having single frontage lots on them in Sandpoint. The rest of North Boyer is, I think, just as busy as the North Boyer that we're considering here, and driveways and homes are placed fronting North Boyer south of the railroad tracks. Additionally, Division, the whole length of Division from Highway 2 to Baldy Mountain Road is, I'm not sure if it's technically classified as an arterial, but it certainly has traditional neighborhood development. And a road that I'm pretty sure isn't categorized as an arterial, but I do think kind of exemplifies what we could envision for North Boyer is Lincoln Avenue. It's a very wide road, very wide right of way. And you've got a very wide bike lane and pedestrian way on either side with houses fronting that wide avenue. So Lincoln between Ontario and Pine, I think, is an example of a street that we could look at for a model for development. Or an even more traditional neighborhood example is South Boyer between Michigan and Ontario streets, which all those homes were built in the last 5 years. So it's a new development, but it was done in a way that respects the character of traditional neighborhood design and development, which is what our comprehensive plan and our zoning codes are intended to protect. Another alternative would be a preliminary plat that actually just includes a 25-foot common landscaped green space separating North Boyer from the first row of houses in the development, because then there would be no issue with double frontage. But the developers did not submit such a plat, so that's why we're here discussing this now. I have a lot of other concerns about double frontage lots. And I don't know, maybe this is a question for staff. Our comprehensive plan mentions the promotion of ADUs throughout. Are ADUs allowed on double frontage lots?
There's no prohibition for them.
Okay.
All other standards in the general provisions for accessory dwelling units, ADUs, would have to be met.
What about the setback requirements? Are the setbacks different on a double frontage lot than they would be on a regular backyard?
No.
Okay. So there's the question of ADUs backed up within a few feet of the sidewalk along North Boyer as well. There was, another question I had was, sorry, maybe I should have asked these questions sooner, but they're coming up at this point. In the rest of Sandpoint, residents are required to clear their sidewalks of snow and ice in a double frontage lot, since by definition, there's 2 front yards. Would these property owners be required to keep their sidewalk clear of snow and ice on the secondary frontage of their lot?
That is a good question, and I do not have the answer off the top of my head. Dan, can you speak to that? That would be within Title VII, Public Ways and Property.
What I can say without reading the code specifically is that a corner lot is a similar situation, I guess. And in those situations, the property owner does have to clear both legs of the corner. How the code specifically reads, I'm not familiar.
Okay. And the proposal, yeah.
I think I have it here. 731A, the property owners of the city shall be responsible for the construction and repair of all sidewalks and curbs abutting upon their respective properties. And on corner lots, such responsibility shall include the sidewalks and curbs adjacent to each street as required by this chapter. Without going through the rest of the code, at least that specific provision, and unless it conflicts with somewhere else, without reading the entire chapter, that would indicate to me that those sidewalks on the back would also be under the responsibility to keep clear of snow of ice and maintained by the abutting property owner.
Okay. So that also leads to, what if there's a 7-foot vinyl fence running the length of the 2,000-foot block? It again limits the ability of property owners to maintain those sidewalks to a very large extent, in my interpretation. Okay.
Construction and Development Services, Amanda Wilson can speak to more details about maintenance of sidewalks.
Okay.
I apologize. I didn't hear the first part of the question, but specifically to Boyer, the city actually maintains the pathway along Boyer Avenue from a snow maintenance perspective. If you're referring to the double frontage lots on Mountain View, then you're spot on. The sidewalk on both sides, Mountain View and that adjacent street to the south of it, would be maintained by the property owner.
Okay. Interesting.
And just for additional clarity, the previously shown cross-section of the arterial 3 designation just shows a multimodal path on one side of arterial 3 designation, which North Boyer would become. So there wouldn't be a sidewalk, there would just be the multimodal path on one side. Is that correct?
Well, that not necessarily, no. Respectfully, we actually already have sidewalk on the west side of Boyer Avenue in some locations. Having an arterial 3 and a pathway on the east side doesn't preclude us from requiring sidewalk on the west side. It's just irrelevant to this development. We're just focused on the east side.
And I was referring more to the east side as well.
Right.
Okay, that's my point. There wouldn't be a multimodal path and a sidewalk per the arterial 3 designation.
Not on the same side of the road.
That was what I was getting at.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I also thought a lot about block lengths and trying to understand why we have 600-foot maximum block lengths in our code, as that's another variance that's being requested here. In doing a little research on that, I came across an article from 2018 in the online journal Strong Towns, which I know Aaron's quite familiar with. Written by Sarah Nobbs. The article is called "You Care About the Subdivision You Care About the Subdivision Regulations, You Just Don't Know It Yet." She had a whole section about maximum block lengths and why they're important, which was very helpful for me in understanding why we have those in our code. Here's some of the highlights. She says, when it comes to walkability, maximum block lengths can make or break a neighborhood. Short blocks make it easier to get from place to place because you never have to travel out of your way. Distances between destinations are shortened. The resulting compact street grid disperses and eases traffic by creating multiple options to get where you're going. Traffic isn't funneled onto a single street and you never have to travel east to go west. Yeah, not relevant. Yeah.
We need to.
Okay. I can just share my final thoughts if that's, yeah, okay.
Okay.
Thanks, I'm asleep at the switch here.
All right. So the justification proposed in the proposal for fewer streets and longer blocks was traffic mitigation. And in my research, it sounds like this could actually worsen traffic issues on those interior roads because all the homes are being funneled onto fewer streets, basically. So my conclusion there was that perhaps maximum block lengths are there in our code for a reason. And that kind of informs my own thinking on this. That's my analysis of what I read in city code and in the comprehensive plan. And I'll wrap up there and pass it to somebody else.
Thanks.
Good.
Thanks. Have you done anything else this week, Jason?
A lot.
You want to go next?
Sure. My observations of the development are pretty simple. If Boyer wasn't on arterial 3 and it had a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit, would it change the dynamic, or would it force the applicant to redesign that had block length application in there that didn't have to ask for exceptions for? And does it eliminate double frontage lots? I have a concern about the traffic being pushed up to Mountain View. That's it, correct? Mountain View. when you look at the number of cars and the peak traffic, it's pretty easy to, hypothetically pretty easy to exceed the 400 feet that it is from its entrance to Boyer to its first entrance back to the development, which means 20 cars. So if you're looking at the total number for the period of time the assessment has been made, it looks to be an excessive length of time for that type of traffic that would probably force a lot of waiting, and then of course would include jumping onto the Alpine Way or whatever. So I just feel like block lengths with interior streets following a traditional grid would be applicable. I don't know if it's a CA3, if it's any safer than the alternative. But if it's not a CA3 and it's 25, it's just like it is in more traditional South Boyer. And that's my observation of it.
If I may, by CA3, do you mean arterial?
I'm sorry, arterial 3. I just got them mixed up. I apologize. I don't have as many notes as he does, but I do have some.
All right. Thanks, Slade. Mose, do you have comments that you want to?
Yeah. So I had some questions about double fronting lots as far as, or two-sided lots, I guess, or double access lots. As far as setbacks, which side is considered the front and which side gets the front setback, and or is there two fronts by definite, or by the description of it as two fronts? So is there two front setbacks? And would that limit the amount of available space for each residence or an ADU?
So there would be, so by their very nature, they're double frontage, so they front both streets. We would only apply the front setback to one where the house is oriented to.
Is that in the code?
We do have code standards. I can't point to the exact section right now unless you want to give me some time, but it would be administered at the time of building permit.
So I could assume that maybe the side facing the interior of the subdivision is going to be considered the front, and that would be the front setback. Facing away from Boyer. The Boyer side is probably not going to be the front setback.
Yeah, and the ultimate orientation of the houses is not really under consideration. It's the subdivision of land. If this was a planned unit development, that would be different, where design of the actual structures comes into play and is something negotiated with for example, additional densities or uses that are not normally allowed. This is a straight subdivision. And so for a straight subdivision, you're really looking at the size of the lots, the frontage, public improvements, if that makes sense. Sure that's accurate?
Well, I have concerns that the double fronting lots I don't think that there's been a justification put forward to make the double fronting lots a requirement, or that they're a necessity in this location. Not saying that I love the idea of, people pulling on and off, Boyer directly to their driveway either, but that is a reality in a lot of other areas of Boyer already. I have concerns about the block length being 2,000 feet. I feel like that's going to put it's going to put the majority. I don't know. I feel like Mountain View is the big concern here, that Mountain View is going to get a lot of, well, it might just get half, which is still a lot of residents. And I think that's going to be a problem. I don't know that putting more streets, more accesses onto Boyer between Mountain View and the furthest south street, I don't know if that really makes the congestion on Boyer much better, because it's really the same amount of vehicles and the same amount of trips probably. But I think it makes it easier for people to get in and out. I do see it is a bottleneck, I think. So I don't quite follow the justification, or I don't see a justification for the block length to be that long, other than streets cost money, and that's obviously going to add significant cost to the project, and it will take more time. And it will cut into a number of lots, theoretically. I don't have any other problems with this preliminary plan, because I feel like this area does need, we need more places for people to build. I think the lot sizes are fine, because 5,000 feet it's bigger than a lot of lots in Sandpoint, which some of them are only 25 feet as far as I know. I think my personal view is I'm just not convinced that the double fronting lots make sense, or that the topography or the traffic plan or other conditions are apparent enough to make that a must. I think there's other ways that would be more feasible. And I that's where I stand. I think I'm trying to see a justification that makes it to where I'm convinced that, yeah, that's the best plan, and we should change the code, or we should amend, or we should add provisions to make this happen the way it's presented. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Dunkel. Commissioner Huesman?
Thank you, Tom. Yeah, I thought a great deal about this over the past couple of weeks. Jason mentioned a number of my concerns, and way more. It's impressive. I do want to say that I applaud this developer's effort to build badly needed housing at moderate prices on moderate lot size. I really applaud their plans to provide public access. I know the public is losing access, and I think making that space available is a good community move. It reflects care for the community. I appreciate that. I also appreciate how much effort they have put into assessing the use of cars in the subdivision and how that will affect traffic on Boyer Avenue. I think in many ways the subdivision addresses many of that. However, the area's frontage along Boyer Avenue really, pardon me?
Commissioner Huesman, you cut out for just a second there. Can you repeat the last sentence that you said?
I think the subdivision addresses many of the city's needs, and I appreciate that. You get that, Aaron?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Having said that, I'm very concerned about the frontage along Boyer Avenue. It really conflicts with our vision for that part of the city. When we knew that we were going to lose, that the University of Idaho was going to sell that property, we went through a process to apply context areas to that area as part of a subdivision, and we made the area along Boyer CA3 higher density and mixed use, specifically because we recognized it would not be appropriate or appealing for single-family homes. So I'm just very frustrated that it's still zoned single-family when that's really not what we were looking for there. And I don't know how or whether we can resolve that conflict. I wonder whether, and then the other thing is if we ask this developer to look longer at and consider looking at different ways to deal with that frontage in particular, or doing a traditional street pattern like we understand that city residents want, it's going to add to the cost of all those homes that we want to minimize the costs of. And I find that frustrating. At the same time, we're going to be living with this plan for the next 100 years. Well, I'm not going to live with it that long, but the city is, and city residents are. So I think it's worth putting in the effort to make it, to provide that, charm and comfort of the traditional Sandpoint neighborhoods that we say we are looking for. So there may be some conflict here with optimal transportation versus optimal housing. And we may have to spend a little area because Boyer will be somewhat slower to drive along than it was 20 years ago as we add more housing along Boyer. But my preference would be to encourage the kind of development along Boyer and that front. I know the, ma'am?
I think we got it. Yeah, you cut out for a second, but I think it caught up with you, but yes.
Okay.
You cut out for just a second, but I think it came through. So
All right.
My apologies.
I recall that the developer indicated in the future, I think it's a great idea. And the developer's representative said they would have to apply for rezoning for that area to build multiple family units. If the developer were to apply for MUR zoning, for example, along Boyer Avenue, I would look very favorable upon that kind of request. Kind of summarizes my thoughts about it.
Thank you, Commissioner Huesman.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
May I just make one point of clarification?
Please.
Without referencing any design considerations on Boyer, specifically, just exclusively regarding CA3 and CA3B, those land use designations, just for clarity, would not necessarily preclude a build out of single family homes. Both the zoning that typically follows, both CA2, 3, and 3B, do not prohibit, in our current zoning anyway, that has followed those designations, would not be prohibitive to single family homes. So I just want to make that clarity. So even if it was rezoned, for example, to multifamily or mixed use residential, which typically follows CA3 or CA3B, single family homes are allowed development pattern in those areas. Just for that point of clarity, that's all. If that makes sense, Commissioner Huesman.
It does. Thank you, Aaron.
All right, thank you. I think I share most of the concerns that other commissioners have articulated. One additional concern that I have is there's a beautiful creek and creek bottom where Sand Creek runs adjacent to this property. And I'm disappointed that the design of this subdivision largely seals it off. It's hermetically sealed. There's a couple of openings, but it's, like I say, from the standpoint of people in this subdivision, that creek may as well not exist. it's barely accessible. I was pleased to see the open space on the wetland area about midway in the property. And I was pleased to hear that Connexia Land Trust, which is a wonderful organization, may get involved, but that's not part of this application. It's not anything official or binding. It's a nice thought. I hope it happens. But leaving that aside, I'm just disappointed that the design doesn't take advantage of what is, to a large degree, a real special feature of this larger piece of property, and that is the existence of Sand Creek along a good part of the east side. So those are my comments. With that, is anyone ready to make a motion? We have, the staff has provided suggested language both for a motion to approve and for a motion to deny, and a motion to approve can include conditions, and there are conditions suggested in the staff report. So with that, is anyone prepared to make a motion? And again, just to remind everybody, you may have this foremost in your mind, the commission's decision, the passing of a motion, whatever the motion is, constitutes a recommendation. It's advice to the city council. The city council will hold a de novo hearing on this matter and make its own decision, taking into consideration the recommendation of the planning commission. So with that.
If the staff approves, I'd like to make a motion to deny. I move the Sandpoint Planning Commission, after consideration of the criteria and relevant standards of Idaho Code and Sandpoint City Code, recommend the City Council deny the request by Tim McDonald, K&M Enterprises of Idaho, LLC, and Derek Mulgrew, M&W Holdings, LLC, for the University Park 152 lot proposed subdivision located at 1904 North Boyer with parcel ID numbers of RPS 00001507551A and RPS 00001512550A, and bounded by East Mountain View to the north, North Boyer Avenue to the west, Sand Creek and Fifth Avenue to the east, and the BNSF railway tracks to the south. Based on evidence, records, and testimony, the reason for denying the request are: staff has followed the notice procedures applicable to subdivisions contained in Sandpoint City Code Title IX. Based on information presented at the hearing, the application is not in compliance with the subdivision and zoning requirements of City Code per the following justifications of request to for excessive block length, A, and B, double frontage lots, block 1. The proposed subdivision is not consistent with the overall planning goals and the objectives outlined in the comprehensive plan.
Thank you. We have a motion. We have a motion on the table to deny the application. Is there a second?
A second.
Commissioner Dunkel has seconded that motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, I'll call for the question. Excuse me? Did someone have a comment?
I would like to add Tom, I would like to add
please.
a third item under item C, and that would refer to the continuation of existing streets issue that Jason mentioned when he was referring to code. I'm not quite sure how to word that. Is continuation of existing streets sufficient?
Yeah. Yes. Aaron?
If I may, that would, if I understand correctly, that would be a motion to amend the parent motion, for which you will vote on this, and then the main motion after that.
So do we need a motion to do that, or do I simply ask the maker of the motion and the second if they're amenable to amending the motion?
Okay, that works.
Okay. So,
I'm amenable to the second motion.
and
Third motion.
Commissioner Dunkel?
Yeah, and I second the second motion.
I'm also amenable to it.
Okay, so the motion is amended. Commissioner Huesman. And with that, I'll call for the question. Melissa, I think we need to call the roll.
Commissioner Riggs,
Yes.
Commissioner Huesman,
Yes.
Commissioner Camp,
Yes.
Commissioner Welker,
Yes.
Commissioner Dunkel.
Yes.
Commissioner Shuck is abstaining. Commissioner Hastings is absent. Motion passes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. The motion to deny the application has passed, and this matter will go as a recommendation to the city council. I believe that concludes our business for tonight. There's no new business, correct, Eric?
Correct, Mr. Chair.
And anything else from staff?
No, sir.
If not, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Is there a motion to
I
adjourn?
move to
A
adjourn.
motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Right.
I believe that's unanimous. Thank you all.